Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gunnar here. Welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to go over a few of the things that I'm going to be doing here this weekend, the 12th, 13th, and 14th of October during this massive cold front, right in the prime time of those bucks shifting into their fall ranges and the very, very early pre-rut, the build up to the rut, still fall food focused, but these bucks are starting to get a little bit edgy. They're covering ground. They're trying to figure out where they're going to spend their falls, and they're checking a lot of these big doe food sources out here during this cold front. So where am I focusing my efforts right now? Am I focusing on food? Am I focusing on bedding? Afternoons, mornings, which is it, right? So I'm going to kind of go over what I'm doing here tonight, tomorrow night, and then Monday night as well. So basically what I'm looking at here is I've got east winds coming in this evening, right? This is Saturday, October 12th. I've got east winds. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the current intel that I have, right? I'm looking at all the pictures that I have, where these deer are at, the bucks that I'm trying to harvest, where they're traveling to, where they're traveling from, and when they're spending their time, where at, right? And so I'm pulling up a map and I'm looking at what are my options? What are my options for a safe east wind hunt where I know that these bucks are not chasing yet? They're not necessarily super invested in the does and chasing the does yet, but they're still food focused. And where are they most likely to be set up with an east wind, and how can I hunt them, but also be smart because it's still considered early season, right? Well, tonight I don't have as many options as I do for, say, a northwest wind. East wind, I don't have as many stand locations set for an east wind, but I do have some, right? And I have the option, okay, I could go deeper into the timber and I could hunt lower into this valley, kind of more in tight to bedding with this east wind, blow it up the hill. But as everybody knows, once the temperatures start to fall in the afternoon, those thermals are going to start to pull down, and a lot of my scent's going to pool in that bottom where I'm anticipating a lot of the deer coming from. And in my opinion, it's just too early to get that aggressive. And at the same time, I don't have daylight photos of deer in there. Is there a potential for bucks to be moving daylight in there? Have I seen bucks moving daylight in there before? Yes, but historically it's later. It's more of that pre-rut phase. It's more of that peak rut phase, that buildup before the peak breeding occurs. So in my opinion, it's just a little bit too soon to go in there. Do I want to go in there? Heck yes. That's a fun place to sit. It's an awesome stand location, and I do think I would have a pretty good chance at definitely seeing a buck down there if I went down in there today. But the risk versus reward, the percentages don't weigh out, and it doesn't make sense for me to get super aggressive right now because I don't have anything telling me that I should, right? I don't have that daylight trail cam. I don't have that video. I don't have any of those pictures of those deer moving during daylight in that area for it to make sense for me to go in there and potentially screw up a hunt for me in the next week or two down in that area when there's maybe a better chance of a buck coming through during daylight. When he's moving more, he's on his feet longer into the daylight hours there. So that's kind of the options that I'm weighing. I could go down there. I could potentially ruin a hunt for the next coming weeks when it's going to get only better, right? The hunting is only going to get better as we get closer and closer to peak breeding. These bucks are going to be up on their feet more and more during daylight. So make sure that you're thinking about that before you get impatient and go into an area that doesn't necessarily have all of the circumstances telling you to go into that area yet. Make sure that you're playing it smart, but also that patiently aggressive approach. Make sure you're not being too careful, but at the same time, a happy medium, right? So the stand that I decided I'm gonna hunt is higher up on the ridge, and at the same time, I'm kind of sitting just inside the timber. I'm probably 75 to 100 yards inside the timber, and basically the way this movement happens is there's a big bedding bowl and it wraps around, and I'm sitting on the top of that, and these deer are funneling out of there, and they're traveling all different directions going to these food sources. And what I've got is I'm sitting just inside this timber here, and I've got hayfield, I've got cornfield and beans stretched out through here, and I'm sitting just inside this timber, and I'm blowing my east wind right up behind me from where I came in. And basically what I'm doing with that is I'm just trying to avoid creating a lot of disturbance. I'm hunting of food source movement, bedding to food source movement in an area where there's a lot of traffic coming through there. They're going a lot of different places, and I have the opportunity to see the whole valley and a lot of deer, but I'm not getting too far in, and I'm not getting too aggressive to potentially disturb a lot of that bedding to food source movement. I'm hunting that edge. I'm hunting right on the edge of, okay, I'm deep enough where if a buck is bedded in here and he is traveling the right direction, he will probably come by me, or I will at least see him. But at the same time, I'm not far enough in where I could potentially blow a buck out of his bed, or I could potentially get down too far on that hillside and let my thermals sink in there. I'm gonna get that clean east wind coming straight up the hill right in my face, and I'm high enough up where those thermals shouldn't affect me. So that's kind of the movement that I'm hunting here tonight. I'm not hunting tight to bedding, and I'm not hunting tight to food. I'm hunting that transition area where I'm anticipating on this cold front night, these deer are gonna be up on their feet a little bit earlier, right? It was 75 degrees, close to 80 yesterday, and now it's low 60s, 15-degree temperature swing. These deer are gonna feel better. They're gonna wanna be up on their feet earlier during daylight hours, and that's what I'm banking on. I'm banking on me not having to go as deep and get as tight to bedding, because he's gonna be up on his feet naturally because of this cold front. He's gonna be up on his feet earlier, so therefore he's gonna get farther towards that food source by the time it gets dark. So in the best case scenario, this buck's up on his feet before dark, he's making his way to that food source before dark, and he makes his way past me before shooting light hours end, right? That's the whole chess game we're playing, right? When is he gonna get up? How long does it take him to get to me? Is he gonna get to me before daylight hours or after, right? When you're playing that game of tight to bedding hunting, you're anticipating him not getting up real early before dark. So he doesn't have a lot of time to get past you or get to that food source that you may be hunting. But when you're hunting closer to those food sources and more of those transition areas, you're banking on him getting up earlier, and that's gonna be your areas for those cold fronts, those big swings and changes in weather patterns. That's more of your transition to food source hunting, because those deer are going to be up on their feet earlier just naturally. So you don't have to go as far. You don't have to be as obtrusive. That's kind of my mindset for this weekend, at least tonight. And now on Sunday, we're going to shift into a real stiff northwest, 15 to 20 miles an hour, right out of the northwest. And so that's going to change the way I approach it as well. With that stiff wind, I can get in places that I wouldn't necessarily be able to if it was a real calm day, right? Like I've talked about, the area that I'm hunting P10 in, it's a little bit of a bottom, it's pretty low, and I need a pretty stiff wind to keep my scent moving up out of that draw. Because if I don't have a stiff wind, my scent, as those thermals start to pull, my scent just sits and it starts to sink down towards that pond where a lot of those deer are congregating right now, especially during this drought, right? And so that's kind of a dangerous setup when I only have 5 to 10 miles an hour. I need that 12 to 15 to 20 almost to keep my scent moving through there. And so that is where I'm focusing for Sunday, right? I see those high winds. I see it out of the right direction, that northwest. So I see a huge opportunity there, and at the same time, down in there, it's a little bit more sheltered, so those deer are gonna feel more comfortable moving in those high wind days down lower in the bottoms. That's what I've noticed over the years. They're moving the same. They're not way up high in the topography on those super windy days because their senses are limited, right? They're hearing a bunch of things. They're seeing a lot of movement. The wind is blowing all different types of scents all around from different areas. And these deer are nervous. They get nervous when they're in all of that wind and they can't detect danger real easily. So they stay down in those bottoms. They hug those low valleys, and they're moving a lot more down in those low valleys, those bottoms, when their senses are a little bit more keen. They can dial in where did that sound come from a little bit better? Where did that smell come from a little bit better? They're not seeing so much movement in the woods because it's a little bit sheltered, because they do have that topography advantage down low. So that's another thing that's playing into my decision of, okay, I'm gonna wanna hunt P10 Sunday night because he is keying in a little bit on that swale there, and he's there on a northwest, I've got a cold front. It's another 10-degree dip on Sunday from today. I've got a really good cold front. I've got apples, I've got acorns, I've got water, and I've got does hitting there consistently as well. But I also can hunt it very safe. I'm covered on my way in, like I talked about on the last video. I busted a couple deer on my way in there last time because it was too calm. Now, right now, when I'm seeing these conditions, I'm very happy with that decision of me backing out that day versus pushing in and potentially busting more deer. Now, I'm really happy because that's sat untouched for 4 or 5 days now. So those deer are very relaxed. There has been zero human scent down in there. They haven't had any obtrusion, and these deer are on that natural pattern. And when that cold front hits, that cold snap comes in, and these deer haven't had any pressure in an area, they're almost excited to be able to get up on their feet and get to this food source, get to that pond, get to that apple tree, get to that scrape tree. They want to get there so early. They're excited to get there because they haven't had any danger present in there. For at least 4 or 5 days, they're untouched, right? So now, this is a very high percentage sit because there's no pressure. I've got good wind in there. The deer are naturally going to want to stay lower because of the high winds. I've got the right wind. These deer are unpressured. I've got all the different food sources and resources that these deer are looking for at this time of the year. I've got does where these bucks are starting to get nosy. I've got scrape trees. These bucks are starting to check out who's in the area. I've got apples, or what's left of them, right in front of the stand location. I've got water that's highly attractive right now because there's no water anywhere else available because of the lack of rain. And at the same time, I've got acorns dropping that the deer, everybody knows they love. So this is going to be a highly productive weekend of hunting. We'll see what happens. I'm very excited. I hope you guys have success. Let me know in the comments below.